Let's get ready for the Minnesota real estate exam with 100 questions covering key state laws, principles, and practices you'll need to know. And keep an eye on the bottom corner. There's something there that could make a big difference in your prep. We'll tell you how to use it in just a minute. Now, let's get started.
Let's start with a quick review of licensing requirements and procedures. Minnesota licensing requirements and procedures. What is the minimum age requirement to apply for a real estate license in Minnesota? Is it A, 16 years, B, 18 years, C, 21 years, or D, 25 years? The answer is B, 18 years. In Minnesota, the minimum age requirement to apply for a real estate license is 18 years. This ensures that applicants have reached the age of majority and are legally capable of entering into contracts. Which of the following is a requirement for renewing a real estate license in Minnesota? Is it A, complete 30 hours of continuing education, B, pass a renewal examination, C, submit a personal financial statement, or D, attend a mandatory state conference? The answer is A, complete 30 hours of continuing education. Minnesota requires licensees to complete 30 hours of continuing education every 2 years to renew their real estate license. This ensures that professionals stay updated with current laws and practices.
Have you noticed the code in the bottom corner? Next time you're stumped, take that code to birdsy.ai for immediate help and a free study session with Birdsy, your personal AI study partner. Plus, you'll get access to hundreds of additional questions, helping you move closer to passing your exam with confidence. The next time you're feeling unsure or stuck, give it a try.
What is the required number of hours for pre-license education to become a real estate salesperson in Minnesota? Is it A, 60 hours, B, 90 hours, C, 120 hours, or D, 150 hours? The answer is B, 90 hours. In Minnesota, aspiring real estate salespersons must complete 90 hours of pre-license education. This requirement ensures that candidates are well prepared and knowledgeable about real estate practices and regulations before obtaining their license. Who is responsible for issuing real estate licenses in Minnesota? Is it A, Minnesota Real Estate Association, B, Minnesota Department of Revenue, C, Minnesota Board of Realtors, or D, Minnesota Department of Commerce? The answer is D, Minnesota Department of Commerce. The Minnesota Department of Commerce is responsible for issuing and regulating real estate licenses, ensuring compliance with state laws and standards. Continuing education requirements. What is the minimum number of continuing education hours required for a real estate license renewal in Minnesota? Is it A, 20 hours, B, 30 hours, C, 40 hours, or D, 50 hours? The answer is B, 30 hours. Minnesota requires real estate licensees to complete 30 hours of continuing education every 2 years. This ensures that professionals stay updated on industry changes and maintain their qualifications. How often must Minnesota real estate licensees complete their continuing education requirements? Is it A, every 2 years, B, annually, C, every 3 years, or D, every 5 years? The answer is A, every 2 years. Licensees in Minnesota must complete their continuing education requirements biennially. This biennial cycle ensures ongoing professional development and compliance with state regulations. Which of the following topics is mandatory in the Minnesota continuing education curriculum for real estate licensees? Is it A, luxury real estate market trends, B, real estate photography, C, agency law, or D, international real estate practices? The answer is C, law. Minnesota requires licensees to complete a module on agency law as part of their continuing education. This ensures that agents understand their legal duties and responsibilities. What is the consequence for a real estate licensee in Minnesota who fails to complete the required continuing education by the renewal deadline? Is it A, a fine is imposed, B, license is permanently revoked, C, license is downgraded, or D, license becomes inactive? The answer is D, license becomes inactive. Failure to complete required continuing education results in an inactive license status. Licensees cannot legally practice real estate until they fulfill the education requirements and reactivate their license. Minnesota-specific exam structure and content. What is the minimum passing score required for the Minnesota-specific real estate licensing exam? Is it A, 70%, B, 75%, C, 80%, or D, 85%? The answer is B, 75%. The Minnesota-specific real estate licensing exam requires a minimum passing score of 75%. This ensures that candidates have adequate knowledge of state-specific regulations and procedures. How many questions are included in the Minnesota-specific portion of the real estate licensing exam? Is it A, 40, B, 50, C, 60, or D? The answer is A, 40. The Minnesota-specific portion of the real estate licensing exam consists of 40 questions, focusing on state-specific laws and procedures. Which topic is not covered in the Minnesota-specific real estate exam? Is it A, Minnesota licensing laws, B, Minnesota contracts, C, Minnesota real estate practices, or D, federal housing laws? The answer is D, federal housing laws. Federal housing laws are not included in the Minnesota-specific exam, which focuses on state-specific topics like licensing laws, contracts, and real estate practices. Which of the following is a unique feature of the Minnesota-specific real estate licensing exam? Is it A, it is entirely multiple choice, B, it has a time limit of 2 hours, C, it includes questions on state-specific laws, or D, it requires a minimum of 2 years of real estate experience? The answer is C, it includes questions on state-specific laws. The Minnesota-specific exam includes questions on state-specific laws and regulations, which are not covered in the national portion. Understanding these unique state requirements is crucial for licensure. Minnesota real estate laws and regulations. Minnesota-specific fair housing laws. Which of the following is a protected class under Minnesota's fair housing laws? Is it A, age, B, marital status, C, sexual orientation, or D, veteran status? The answer is C, sexual orientation. Minnesota's fair housing laws include protection based on sexual orientation, which is not covered under federal law. This state-specific protection aims to prevent discrimination in housing-related transactions. What is the primary purpose of Minnesota's Fair Housing Act? Is it A, to prevent discrimination in housing, B, to regulate real estate commissions, C, to control housing prices, or D, to oversee building safety standards? The answer is A, to prevent discrimination in housing. The primary purpose is to prevent discrimination in housing-related activities based on specific protected classes, ensuring equal access and opportunity for all individuals in Minnesota. Which agency is responsible for enforcing Minnesota's fair housing laws? Is it A, Minnesota Housing Finance Agency, B, Minnesota Department of Commerce, C, Minnesota Real Estate Commission, or D, Minnesota Department of Human Rights? The answer is D, Minnesota Department of Human Rights. The Minnesota Department of Human Rights enforces the state's fair housing laws, ensuring compliance and handling complaints related to housing discrimination. How does Minnesota's fair housing law differ from federal fair housing law? Is it A, it includes age as a protected class? B, it includes sexual orientation and marital status? C, it applies only to rental properties? Or D, it does not include race as a protected class? The answer is B, it includes sexual orientation and marital status. Minnesota's law includes additional protected classes, such as sexual orientation and marital status, expanding beyond the federal protections to address state-specific concerns. What action can a tenant take if they experience discrimination under Minnesota's fair housing laws? Is it A, file a complaint with the Minnesota Department of Human Rights? B, report to the local police department? C, contact the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development? Or D, seek mediation through the Minnesota Housing Finance Agency? The answer is A, file a complaint with the Minnesota Department of Human Rights. Tenants can file a complaint with the Minnesota Department of Human Rights, which investigates allegations of discrimination and enforces compliance with fair housing laws. What is the statute of limitations for filing a housing discrimination complaint under Minnesota's fair housing laws? Is it A, 6 months, B, 1 year, C, 2 years, or D, 3 years? The answer is B, 1 year. In Minnesota, individuals have 1 year from the date of the alleged discriminatory act to file a complaint with the Minnesota Department of Human Rights. This timeframe ensures timely investigation and resolution.
If you're finding this helpful, please take a minute to like this video and subscribe to our channel for more practice exams, useful tips, and complimentary study sessions with Birdsy.
Minnesota-specific contract requirements. What is the required time frame for a seller in Minnesota to provide a disclosure statement to a buyer before the execution of a purchase agreement? Is it A, at least 24 hours, B, before the buyer signs the purchase agreement, C, within 3 days after signing, or D, at closing? The answer is B, before the buyer signs the purchase agreement. Minnesota law requires that a seller provide a disclosure statement to the buyer before the buyer signs a purchase agreement. This ensures that the buyer is fully informed of any material facts about the property. In Minnesota, which party is responsible for ensuring that the earnest money is deposited in a trust account? Is it A, the buyer, B, the seller, C, the listing broker, or D, the title company? The answer is C, the listing broker. The listing broker in Minnesota is responsible for ensuring that earnest money is deposited in a trust account. This protects the funds and ensures they are handled according to state regulations. Which of the following is not a required element of a valid purchase agreement in Minnesota? Is it A, identification of the parties, B, property description, C, purchase price, or D, property inspection report? The answer is D, property inspection report. In Minnesota, a valid purchase agreement must include the identification of the parties, property description, purchase price, and signatures. A property inspection report is not a required element. What is the maximum allowable time for a buyer to cancel a purchase agreement in Minnesota if the seller fails to provide a disclosure statement? Is it A, 72 hours, B, 5 days, C, 10 days, or D, 30 days? The answer is A, 72 hours. In Minnesota, if a seller fails to provide the required disclosure statement, the buyer has 72 hours to cancel the purchase agreement. This protects the buyer's right to receive full disclosure. In Minnesota, what must a purchase agreement contain regarding the financing terms to be enforceable? Is it A, the buyer's credit score, B, type of loan and contingencies, C, the interest rate, or D, the lender's approval? The answer is B, type of loan and contingencies. A Minnesota purchase agreement must specify the financing terms, including the type of loan and any contingencies. This ensures both parties understand the financial conditions under which the sale will proceed. In Minnesota, when must a seller provide the well disclosure statement to a buyer? Is it A, at the closing of the sale, B, before signing the purchase agreement, C, after the purchase agreement is signed, or D, within 10 days of the agreement? The answer is B, before signing the purchase agreement. In Minnesota, sellers must provide the well disclosure statement before signing the purchase agreement. This ensures buyers are informed about the water source and its condition, protecting consumer interests. Overview of Minnesota real estate statutes. Which entity is responsible for the enforcement of real estate laws in Minnesota? Is it A, Minnesota Real Estate Board, B, Minnesota Department of Commerce, C, Minnesota Housing Authority, or D, Minnesota State Legislature? The answer is B, Minnesota Department of Commerce. The Minnesota Department of Commerce is tasked with overseeing and enforcing real estate laws, ensuring compliance, and protecting consumer interests in real estate transactions. What is the primary purpose of the Minnesota real estate licensing laws? Is it A, to protect the public, B, to regulate real estate prices, C, to increase state revenue, or D, to promote real estate development? The answer is A, to protect the public. The primary purpose of Minnesota real estate licensing laws is to protect the public by ensuring that only qualified individuals engage in real estate transactions. What must a real estate licensee in Minnesota do to maintain an active license? Is it A, renew their license every year, B, pass a new licensing exam, C, complete continuing education, or D, submit a new background check? The answer is C, complete continuing education. Minnesota licensees must complete continuing education requirements to maintain an active license, ensuring they stay informed about changes in laws and practices. In Minnesota, which of the following actions could result in disciplinary action against a real estate licensee? Is it A, advertising a property for sale, B, negotiating a sales contract, C, managing rental properties, or D, practicing without a license? The answer is D, practicing without a license. Practicing without a license is a serious violation that can result in disciplinary action, including fines, suspension, or revocation of a license. Minnesota property ownership and land use. Types of property ownership, e.g. fee simple, leasehold, joint tenancy. In Minnesota, which type of property ownership allows an individual to hold the most complete bundle of rights in real estate? Is it A, fee simple, B, leasehold, C, joint tenancy, or D, tenancy in common? The answer is A, fee simple. Fee simple ownership provides the most comprehensive ownership rights, including the right to use, sell, lease, or bequeath the property. It is the most common form of ownership in Minnesota. Which type of ownership is characterized by the right of survivorship in Minnesota? Is it A, fee simple, B, leasehold, C, joint tenancy, or D, tenancy in common? The answer is C, joint tenancy. Joint tenancy includes the right of survivorship, meaning upon the death of one owner, the property automatically passes to the surviving joint tenants, bypassing probate. In Minnesota, what distinguishes tenancy in common from joint tenancy? Is it A, equal ownership shares, B, right of survivorship, C, leasehold rights, or D, ability to bequeath shares? The answer is D, ability to bequeath shares. Tenancy in common allows owners to hold unequal shares and pass on their ownership through a will, whereas joint tenancy requires equal shares and includes rights of survivorship. What is a key feature of a leasehold estate in Minnesota? Is it A, permanent ownership, B, temporary possession, C, right of survivorship, or D, equal ownership shares? The answer is B, temporary possession. A leasehold estate grants the tenant the right to occupy and use the property for a specified period under a lease agreement without owning the property itself.
Stuck on a question? Just think of the Birdsy link in the description as your friendly neighborhood superhero swooping in to save the day with answers. Feel free to explore it now and return to continue. Simply hit pause, and we'll be waiting when you get back.
Public versus private land use controls. Which of the following is a public land use control in Minnesota? Is it A, easements, B, deed restrictions, C, zoning laws, or D, covenants? The answer is C, zoning laws. Zoning laws are public land use controls established by local governments to regulate land use and development. They ensure land is used in a manner consistent with community planning. What is the primary purpose of Minnesota's environmental review program? Is it A, to enforce zoning laws, B, to evaluate environmental impacts, C, to regulate property taxes, or D, to issue building permits? The answer is B, to evaluate environmental impacts. The Environmental Review Program assesses potential environmental impacts of proposed projects to ensure sustainable development and protect natural resources. Which governmental body typically enforces zoning regulations in Minnesota? Is it A, local municipalities, B, state legislature, C, federal government, or D, real estate boards? The answer is A, local municipalities. Local municipalities, such as city or county governments, are responsible for creating and enforcing zoning regulations to manage land use within their jurisdictions. What is the role of a variance in Minnesota's land use controls? Is it A, to change property ownership, B, to modify environmental regulations, C, to enforce building codes, or D, to permit deviation from zoning laws? The answer is D, to permit deviation from zoning laws. A variance allows a property owner to deviate from strict zoning requirements, provided the deviation does not harm the public welfare and is justified by unique circumstances. Land use and zoning laws. Which of the following is a primary purpose of zoning laws in Minnesota? Is it A, to increase property taxes, B, to promote urban sprawl, C, to segregate different land uses, or D, to enhance public transportation? The answer is C, to segregate different land uses. Zoning laws are designed to ensure the orderly development of communities by designating specific areas for residential, commercial, industrial, and other uses, thereby reducing conflicts between land uses. In Minnesota, what is a variance in the context of zoning laws? Is it A, an exception to zoning regulations, B, a change in property ownership, C, a new zoning designation, or D, an increase in property taxes? The answer is A, an exception to zoning regulations. A variance is an exception to the zoning ordinance, allowing a property owner to use the land in a way that is not otherwise permitted by the zoning code under specific circumstances. What is the role of a comprehensive plan in Minnesota's land use planning? Is it A, to enforce zoning laws, B, to determine property taxes, C, to provide legal advice, or D, to guide future development? The answer is D, to guide future development. A comprehensive plan outlines long-term goals and strategies for land use, development, and infrastructure, guiding decisions to ensure sustainable growth and community development. What is a conditional use permit in the context of Minnesota zoning laws? Is it A, a permit for building new structures, B, a permit for specific uses under certain conditions, C, a permit for changing zoning designations, or D, a permit for tax exemptions? The answer is B, a permit for specific uses under certain conditions. A conditional use permit allows a property owner to use their land in a way not typically permitted under the zoning ordinance, provided certain conditions are met to mitigate potential impacts. Condominiums and HOAs. What is the primary function of a homeowners association in a Minnesota condominium complex? Is it A, manage individual unit sales, B, maintain and manage common areas, C, provide individual property insurance, or D, determine property taxes for units? The answer is B, maintain and manage common areas. In Minnesota, the primary function of an HOA is to manage common areas, enforce rules, and maintain property values within the community. This includes budgeting for maintenance and repairs. Which of the following is a common responsibility of condominium owners in Minnesota? Is it A, maintaining exterior building walls, B, managing community landscaping, C, maintaining the interior of their unit, or D, enforcing rules? The answer is C, maintaining the interior of their unit. Condominium owners in Minnesota are generally responsible for the interior maintenance of their units, which includes repairs and updates within their own property lines. What is a common assessment in the context of Minnesota HOAs? Is it A, regular fees for shared expenses, B, one-time fees for special projects, C, individual unit mortgage payments, or D, property tax payments for the community? The answer is A, regular fees for shared expenses. Common assessments are regular fees charged by the HOA to cover shared expenses like maintenance of common areas, utilities, and insurance. They are essential for the financial health of the community. In Minnesota, what is the role of a condominium board of directors? Is it A, selling individual units, B, providing personal legal advice to owners, C, setting property tax rates, or D, managing condominium operations? The answer is D, managing condominium operations. The board of directors in a Minnesota condominium is responsible for making decisions regarding the management and operation of the condominium, including budgeting, rule enforcement, and maintenance oversight, environmental issues, and wetland management. In Minnesota, which agency is primarily responsible for overseeing wetland management and protection? Is it A, Minnesota Department of Natural Resources, B, Minnesota Pollution Control Agency, C, Minnesota Board of Water and Soil Resources, or D, Minnesota Department of Agriculture? The answer is C, Minnesota Board of Water and Soil Resources. The Minnesota Board of Water and Soil Resources is the main agency responsible for wetland management, ensuring compliance with state policies and promoting sustainable land use practices. What is the primary purpose of the Minnesota Wetland Conservation Act? Is it A, to prevent the loss and degradation of wetlands, B, to promote agricultural development in wetland areas, C, to increase urban development near wetland areas, or D, to facilitate recreational activities in wetland regions? The answer is A, to prevent the loss and degradation of wetlands. The Minnesota Wetland Conservation Act aims to protect and preserve wetlands by preventing their degradation and ensuring no net loss of wetland areas within the state. How does Minnesota law define a wetland? Is it A, any land area with standing water, B, areas inundated or saturated by water-supporting hydrophytic vegetation, C, floodplains adjacent to rivers, Or D, all lands within 100 feet of a water body? The answer is B, areas inundated or saturated by water supporting hydrophytic vegetation. Minnesota law defines wetlands as areas that are inundated or saturated by surface or groundwater, supporting vegetation typically adapted for life in saturated soil conditions. Which of the following is a requirement under the Minnesota Wetland Conservation Act for a landowner planning to drain a wetland? Is it A, obtaining a permit from the local agricultural board? B, providing financial compensation to the state? C, ensuring the wetland is not used for recreational purposes? Or D, mitigating the loss by restoring or creating wetlands? The answer is D, mitigating the loss by restoring or creating wetlands. Under the Act, landowners must ensure no net loss of wetlands, often requiring mitigation measures such as creating or restoring wetlands elsewhere. Minnesota Agency Law and Ethics. Agency Relationship Laws. Under Minnesota agency law, what is a key responsibility of a real estate agent when representing a buyer? Is it A, act in the best interest of the buyer? B, disclose all known defects of the property? C, ensure the property is sold at the highest price? Or D, provide legal advice to the buyer? The answer is A, act in the best interest of the buyer. A real estate agent must act in the best interest of the buyer, ensuring loyalty and confidentiality while providing necessary information for informed decision-making. What is a dual agency in Minnesota real estate transactions? Is it A, an agent representing multiple buyers for the same property? B, an agent representing two different properties for the same buyer? C, two agents from different brokerages representing a single client? Or D, an agent representing both the buyer and seller in a transaction? The answer is D, an agent representing both the buyer and seller in a transaction. Dual agency occurs when a single agent or brokerage represents both the buyer and seller in a transaction, requiring full disclosure and consent from all parties involved. In Minnesota, what must an agent do when a conflict of interest arises? Is it A, ignore the conflict to maintain client trust? B, disclose the conflict to the client immediately? C, report the conflict to the Minnesota Real Estate Board? Or D, terminate the agency relationship? The answer is B, disclose the conflict to the client immediately. Agents must disclose any conflicts of interest to their clients, ensuring transparency and allowing the client to make informed decisions regarding the continuation of the relationship. Which of the following is considered unethical behavior for a Minnesota real estate agent? Is it A, negotiating on behalf of the client? B, disclosing property defects to potential buyers? C, providing false information to clients? Or D, referring clients to a mortgage broker? The answer is C, providing false information to clients. Providing false information to clients undermines trust and violates ethical standards, as agents are required to be honest and transparent in all communications. Fiduciary duties and client representation. In Minnesota, which fiduciary duty requires an agent to act in the best interest of the client, prioritizing the client's needs above their own? Is it A, loyalty? B, disclosure? C, confidentiality? Or D, reasonable care? The answer is A, loyalty. The duty of loyalty obligates agents to prioritize their clients' interests above their own. This involves avoiding conflicts of interest and ensuring that all actions taken are in the client's best interest. What does the fiduciary duty of confidentiality entail in Minnesota agency law? Is it A, sharing client information with third parties? B, protecting client information from unauthorized disclosure? C, disclosing all known material facts? Or D, ensuring the client receives the best possible price? The answer is B, protecting client information from unauthorized disclosure. Confidentiality requires agents to keep client information private even after the agency relationship ends. This duty ensures trust and protects sensitive client information from unauthorized disclosure. Under Minnesota agency law, what fiduciary duty requires agents to inform clients of all material facts related to the transaction? Is it A, loyalty, B, confidentiality, C, disclosure, or D, obedience? The answer is C, disclosure. The duty of disclosure obligates agents to inform their clients of all material facts that could affect the transaction, ensuring informed decision-making and transparency in the client-agent relationship. Which fiduciary duty in Minnesota requires an agent to follow all lawful instructions from their client? Is it A, reasonable care, B, confidentiality, C, or D, obedience? The answer is D, obedience. The duty of obedience obligates agents to follow all lawful instructions from their clients, ensuring that the client's wishes are respected and executed as directed within legal boundaries. Minnesota Ethics Guidelines and Enforcement. What is the primary purpose of the Minnesota Ethics Guidelines in real estate practice? Is it A, to increase real estate sales, B, to promote competition among realtors, C, to ensure ethical conduct and protect public interest, or D, to reduce the number of licensed realtors? The answer is C, to ensure ethical conduct and protect public interest. The Minnesota Ethics Guidelines are designed to ensure that all real estate practitioners adhere to a consistent standard of professional conduct, protecting the interests of clients and maintaining public trust. Which body is responsible for enforcing the Minnesota Ethics Guidelines in real estate? Is it A, Minnesota Association of Realtors, B, Minnesota Department of Commerce, C, National Association of Realtors, or D, local real estate boards? The answer is B, Minnesota Department of Commerce. The Minnesota Department of Commerce is tasked with enforcing real estate ethics guidelines, ensuring compliance, and addressing violations through investigation and disciplinary actions. What consequence might a Minnesota real estate agent face for violating the state's ethics guidelines? Is it A, license suspension or revocation, B, mandatory community service, C, increased commission rates, or D, public commendation? The answer is A, license suspension or revocation. Violations of Minnesota's ethics guidelines can lead to disciplinary actions, such as suspension or revocation of a real estate license, depending on the severity of the misconduct. How often must Minnesota real estate agents complete continuing education on ethics? Is it A, annually, B, every 3 years, C, every 2 years, or D, every 5 years? The answer is C, every 2 years. Minnesota real estate agents are required to complete continuing education courses on ethics every 2 years to ensure they remain informed about ethical standards and changes in regulations.
Don't forget to comment below with your tips, challenges, and thoughts on exam preparation. Your experiences can make a big difference for others.
Minnesota property valuation. Basic principles of property valuation. Which principle of property valuation states that the value of a property is influenced by the cost of acquiring an equally desirable substitute? Is it A, principle of contribution, B, principle of substitution, C, principle of change, or D, principle of anticipation? The answer is B, principle of substitution. The principle of substitution suggests that a property's value is set by the cost of acquiring a similar property. This principle is fundamental in property valuation, ensuring fair market values. What principle of property valuation involves the impact of future benefits on the current value of a property? Is it A, principle of balance, B, principle of regression, C, principle of competition, or D, principle of anticipation? The answer is D, principle of anticipation. The principle of anticipation states that the value of a property is based on the expected future benefits it will provide, influencing current market value assessments. In Minnesota property valuation, which principle suggests that the value of a property is affected by the presence of similar properties? Is it A, principle of conformity, B, principle of progression, C, principle of externalities, or D, principle of highest and best use? The answer is A, principle of conformity. The principle of conformity states that property values tend to be higher when properties are similar in style, condition, and use, promoting harmony within a neighborhood. Which principle is applied when assessing the impact of a new shopping center on the value of nearby residential properties? Is it A, principle of competition, B, principle of substitution, C, principle of externalities, or D, principle of change? The answer is C, principle of externalities. The principle of externalities considers how external factors, such as new developments, can positively or negatively impact property values, crucial in urban planning and valuation. Sales comparison, cost, and income approaches. Which approach to property valuation is most commonly used when appraising a single-family home in Minnesota? Is it A, sales comparison approach, B, cost approach, C, income approach, or D, residual approach? The answer is A, sales comparison approach. The sales comparison approach is typically used for single-family homes, as it relies on comparing similar properties that have recently sold in the area, providing a realistic market value. In the cost approach to property valuation, which component is subtracted from the reproduction or replacement cost to arrive at the property's value? Is it A, market adjustment, B, land value, C, depreciation, or D, operating expenses? The answer is C, depreciation. Depreciation is subtracted from the replacement or reproduction cost to account for the loss in value due to wear and tear, obsolescence, or other factors. When using the income approach, what is the capitalization rate primarily used for? Is it A, estimating construction costs, B, adjusting comparable sales, C, calculating depreciation, or D, estimating property value? The answer is D, estimating property value. The capitalization rate is used to convert net operating income into an estimate of property value, reflecting the investor's required rate of return. Which factor is not typically considered when selecting comparables in the sales comparison approach? Is it A, location, B, historical appreciation rate, C, size and age, or D, condition? The answer is B, historical appreciation rate. The property's historical appreciation rate is not typically considered in selecting comparables, as it focuses on current market conditions and recent sales. Minnesota financing. Mortgage loans and financing options. What is the primary purpose of a Minnesota mortgage lender's pre-approval process? Is it A, to finalize the mortgage loan agreement, B, to negotiate loan terms with the borrower, C, to assess the borrower's creditworthiness and loan limits, or D, to lock in an interest rate for the borrower? The answer is C, to assess the borrower's creditworthiness and loan limits. A pre-approval process determines the maximum loan amount a borrower qualifies for based on their financial status. This helps both the lender and borrower understand purchasing power and streamline the home buying process. Which type of mortgage is most suitable for a first-time homebuyer in Minnesota seeking low down payments? Is it A, Federal Housing Administration, FHA loan, B, conventional loan, C, jumbo loan, or D, U.S. Department of Veterans Affairs, VA loan? The answer is A, Federal Housing Administration, FHA loan. FHA loans are popular among first-time homebuyers due to their low down payment requirements and flexible credit score criteria, making homeownership more accessible. How does an adjustable rate mortgage differ from a fixed rate mortgage in Minnesota? Is it A, ARM offers a higher initial interest rate than fixed rate mortgages? B, ARM interest rates can fluctuate over time, unlike fixed rate mortgages? C, ARM requires a larger down payment than fixed rate mortgages? Or D, ARM is only available for luxury properties in Minnesota? The answer is B, ARM interest rates can fluctuate over time, unlike fixed rate mortgages. An ARM has interest rates that can change periodically based on market conditions, whereas a fixed rate mortgage maintains a constant rate throughout the loan term. What is the typical duration of a fixed-rate mortgage term in Minnesota? Is it A, 5 years, B, 10 years, C, 30 years, or D, 50 years? The answer is C, 30 years. The most common fixed-rate mortgage terms are 15 or 30 years, providing predictable monthly payments and interest rates for the duration of the loan. Loan applications and approval processes. What is the primary purpose of the loan estimate form in Minnesota's loan application process? Is it A, to provide borrowers with detailed loan terms and costs? B, to finalize the loan agreement between borrower and lender? C, to assess the borrower's creditworthiness? Or D, to document the borrower's employment history? The answer is A, to provide borrowers with detailed loan terms and costs. The loan estimate form provides borrowers with important details about their loan terms, helping them understand costs and compare offers. It must be provided within 3 business days of application. In Minnesota, what is a key requirement for a mortgage lender when processing a loan application? Is it A, provide a list of local real estate agents? B, verify the borrower's ability to repay the loan? C, offer the lowest interest rate available? Or D, ensure the property is in a prime location? The answer is B, verify the borrower's ability to repay the loan. Lenders must verify the borrower's ability to repay the loan by evaluating income, debts, and credit history, ensuring compliance with federal and state guidelines. Which document is used to confirm the terms of a loan after approval in Minnesota? Is it A, loan estimate, B, pre-approval letter, C, closing disclosure, or D, mortgage application? The answer is C, closing disclosure. The closing disclosure outlines the final loan terms and costs provided to borrowers at least 3 business days before closing, ensuring they understand their financial obligations. What is the role of the underwriter in the Minnesota loan approval process? Is it A, to offer the borrower the best loan rate, B, to conduct a property appraisal, C, to finalize the loan agreement, or D, to assess the risk of lending to the borrower? The answer is D, to assess the risk of lending to the borrower. Underwriters assess the risk of lending by evaluating the borrower's credit history, income, and other financial factors, ensuring compliance with lending standards and guidelines. Minnesota mortgage disclosure requirements. What is the primary purpose of the Minnesota mortgage disclosure requirements? Is it A, to ensure borrowers understand the terms of their mortgage, B, to regulate mortgage interest rates, C, to limit the number of mortgage lenders in the state, or D, to increase state revenue through mortgage taxes? The answer is A, to ensure borrowers understand the terms of their mortgage. The Minnesota mortgage disclosure requirements aim to ensure borrowers receive clear and comprehensive information about the terms and conditions of their mortgage, promoting transparency and informed decision-making. Which document must be provided to a borrower under Minnesota mortgage disclosure requirements before closing? Is it A, loan estimate, B, closing disclosure, C, mortgage application, or D, appraisal report? The answer is B, closing disclosure. The closing disclosure must be provided to borrowers at least 3 business days before closing to ensure they understand the final terms and costs of their mortgage. How many days in advance must the loan estimate be provided to the borrower under Minnesota regulations? Is it A, 1 day, B, 2 days, C, 3 days, or D, 5 days? The answer is C, 3 days. The loan estimate must be provided within 3 business days of receiving a borrower's application, ensuring they understand potential costs early in the process. What is the consequence if a lender fails to provide the closing disclosure on time in Minnesota? Is it A, the lender is fined, B, the borrower pays a penalty, C, the interest rate increases, or D, the closing may be delayed? The answer is D, the closing may be delayed. Failing to provide the closing disclosure on time can delay the closing process, as borrowers must have sufficient time to review the terms before finalizing their mortgage.
Notice the code in the corner? When you're stumped by a question, enter it at birdsy.ai for immediate help. Enjoy complimentary study sessions and access to hundreds of additional questions to help you pass your exam with confidence.
Minnesota-specific loan programs. Which Minnesota-specific loan program is designed to help first-time homebuyers with down payment and closing costs? Is it A, Minnesota Housing Fix-Up Loan Program, B, Minnesota Housing Step-Up Loan Program, C, Minnesota Housing Startup Loan Program, or D, Minnesota Housing Homeownership Assistance Fund? The answer is C, Minnesota Housing Startup Loan Program. The Minnesota Housing Startup Loan Program assists first-time homebuyers by providing down payment and closing cost assistance, making homeownership more accessible to those with limited initial funds. What is a primary benefit of the Minnesota Housing Fix-Up Loan Program? Is it A, affordable financing for home improvements, B, assistance for first-time homebuyers, C, refinancing options for existing mortgages, or D, grants for new home construction? The answer is A, affordable financing for home improvements. The Fix-Up Loan Program provides affordable financing for home improvements, allowing homeowners to make necessary repairs or upgrades without financial strain. Who is eligible for the Minnesota Housing Step-Up Loan Program? Is it A, first-time homebuyers only, B, repeat homebuyers, C, veterans exclusively, or D, investors purchasing rental properties? The answer is B, repeat homebuyers. The Step-Up Loan Program is designed for repeat homebuyers, providing them with affordable financing options to purchase their next home. What distinguishes the Minnesota Housing Homeownership Assistance Fund from other loan programs? Is it A, focus on new construction loans, B, exclusively offers low-interest loans, C, limited to specific geographic areas, or D, offers grants and counseling services? The answer is D, offers grants and counseling services. The Homeownership Assistance Fund provides broader financial support beyond loans, including grants and counseling, to help stabilize homeownership for those facing financial difficulties. Minnesota Housing Finance Agency. What is the primary purpose of the Minnesota Housing Finance Agency? Is it A, to provide affordable housing opportunities to low and moderate income Minnesotans. B. To regulate real estate market prices in Minnesota. C. To offer loans to commercial real estate developers. Or D. To manage rental properties owned by the state. The answer is A. To provide affordable housing opportunities to low and moderate income Minnesotans. The MHFA is primarily tasked with providing affordable housing opportunities to low and moderate income Minnesotans. It achieves this through various programs and financing options. Which program does the MHFA offer to assist first-time homebuyers? Is it A. Home renovation loan, B. Market rate loan, C. Startup program, or D. Rental assistance program? The answer is C. Startup program. The MHFA offers the Startup program, which provides first-time homebuyers with down payment assistance and affordable interest rates, making homeownership more accessible. How does the MHFA support the development of affordable rental housing? Is it A. By purchasing properties and leasing them at reduced rates, B. By offering tax credits and low-interest loans to developers, C. By mandating rent control measures across Minnesota, or D. By providing direct rental subsidies to tenants? The answer is B. By offering tax credits and low-interest loans to developers. The MHFA supports affordable rental housing development through tax credits and low-interest loans, incentivizing developers to create and maintain affordable rental units. What is the role of the MHFA in the Minnesota Fix-Up Loan Program? Is it A. To provide grants for home renovations, B. To regulate construction standards for home repairs, C. To offer insurance for home improvement projects, or D. To administer low-interest loans for home improvements? The answer is D. To administer low-interest loans for home improvements. The MHFA administers the Fix-Up Loan Program, providing low-interest loans to homeowners for home improvements, enhancing property conditions and energy efficiency. Minnesota Disclosure Requirements and Forms. Minnesota-specific disclosure requirements. What is the primary purpose of the Minnesota Seller's Disclosure Statement? Is it A. To determine the market value of the property, B. To disclose known defects and issues with the property, C. To provide a history of previous owners, or D. To outline the seller's asking price? The answer is B. To disclose known defects and issues with the property. The Minnesota Seller's Disclosure Statement is intended to inform potential buyers about known defects and issues with the property, ensuring transparency and reducing the risk of legal disputes post-sale. Which of the following is a mandatory disclosure requirement under Minnesota law? Is it A. Radon levels, B. The seller's financial status, C. The neighborhood crime rate, or D. The property's future market value? The answer is A. Radon levels. Sellers in Minnesota must disclose any knowledge of radon levels in the property, as it is a health hazard. This requirement is part of the state's effort to ensure buyer safety. When must the Minnesota Seller's Disclosure Statement be presented to the buyer? Is it A. After the closing of the sale, B. At the time of property listing, C. Before signing the purchase agreement, or D. During the home inspection? The answer is C. Before signing the purchase agreement. The disclosure statement must be presented before the buyer signs a purchase agreement to ensure they are fully informed about the property's condition before committing to the purchase. Which of the following must be disclosed regarding environmental issues in Minnesota? Is it A. The presence of a swimming pool, B. The color of the exterior paint, C. The type of heating system, or D. Asbestos in the building materials? The answer is D. Asbestos in the building materials. Sellers are required to disclose knowledge of hazardous substances like asbestos, which can pose health risks. This ensures buyers are aware of potential environmental hazards on the property. Commonly used Minnesota forms. Which form is commonly used in Minnesota to disclose known material facts about a property's condition? Is it A, purchase agreement, B, seller's property disclosure statement, C, lead-based paint disclosure, or D, agency disclosure? The answer is B, seller's property disclosure statement. The seller's property disclosure statement is used in Minnesota to disclose known material facts about a property's condition to potential buyers, ensuring transparency and informed decision-making. What is the primary purpose of the Minnesota Agency Disclosure Form? Is it A, to disclose property defects, B, to report environmental hazards, C, to inform clients about agency relationships, or D, to outline financing terms? The answer is C, to inform clients about agency relationships. The Minnesota Agency Disclosure Form's primary purpose is to inform clients about the nature of the agency relationship, ensuring they understand the duties owed by the agent. In Minnesota, what must sellers provide to buyers if the property was built before 1978? Is it A, lead-based paint disclosure, B, radon disclosure, C, seller's property disclosure statement, or D, environmental impact statement? The answer is A, lead-based paint disclosure. Sellers must provide a lead-based paint disclosure for properties built before 1978 as required by federal law to inform buyers of potential lead hazards. What is the significance of the Minnesota Radon Awareness Act in real estate transactions? Is it A, it regulates water quality testing, B, it mandates energy efficiency disclosures, C, it requires asbestos inspection reports, or D, it requires radon disclosure and testing information? The answer is D, it requires radon disclosure and testing information. The Minnesota Radon Awareness Act mandates that sellers disclose radon test results and provide a radon warning statement, increasing awareness and safety for buyers. Specific procedures for transactions. What is the primary purpose of the Minnesota Seller's Disclosure Statement in real estate transactions? Is it A, to provide buyers with information about the property's condition, B, to guarantee the buyer's financing approval, C, to outline the terms of the mortgage agreement, or D, to set the final sale price of the property? The answer is A, to provide buyers with information about the property's condition. The Minnesota Seller's Disclosure Statement is designed to inform potential buyers about the condition of the property, ensuring transparency and protecting both parties from disputes over undisclosed issues. Which of the following is not required to be disclosed in Minnesota's residential property disclosure? Is it A, presence of radon gas, B, current market value, C, structural defects, or D, water damage history? The answer is B, current market value. Minnesota law requires sellers to disclose known material facts about the property, but they are not required to disclose the property's market value, which is determined by appraisal. When must the Minnesota Seller's Disclosure Statement be provided to the buyer? Is it A, at the closing of the sale, B, after the purchase agreement is signed, C, before the purchase agreement is signed, or D, during the home inspection? The answer is C, before the purchase agreement is signed. The disclosure statement must be provided before the buyer signs a purchase agreement. This ensures the buyer is fully informed about the property's condition before committing to the purchase. What is the consequence if a seller fails to provide the required disclosure in Minnesota? Is it A, the transaction is automatically canceled, B, the buyer must pay a penalty fee, C. The seller pays double the property's value. Or D. The seller may face legal action or rescission. The answer is D. The seller may face legal action or rescission. Failure to provide required disclosures can lead to legal action, rescission of the sale, or liability for damages. It ensures sellers are accountable for transparency and honesty in transactions.
Thanks for joining us today. If you found this video helpful, subscribe to our channel for more practice exams, tips, and tricks. And don't forget to visit Birdsy.ai for complimentary study sessions with Birdsy, your AI-powered study partner.